All right, welcome to today's recap. It's Friday, and wow, what another event-filled day. So I don't normally shoot videos after Friday for the market recap, but I think it just makes sense. I do it when there's a lot of activity. So really again, headline-driven day. A lot of politics going on, both with the tax vote as well as allegations or findings coming out about this guy Flynn and possibly implicating Trump. So we don't really know what's going to happen with this, but the reason why I wanted to, and it's tough to not talk about these subjects. I try to not talk about politics as much as possible. But when it does this to the market, you have to have some type of strategy, and you have to have some type of I mean, basically a strategy for how to handle these situations. And so a couple things, right? I mean, we've seen some pretty big rotations this week. A lot of money getting out of tech, which I think really got way too exuberant. I talked about that earlier this week in some videos. And so now, what do you do with these positions? Or what do you do with some of these names that have been some of your leaders all year round? One of the first ones that probably has seen some of the best option activity, I would say, all year long is Micron, right? So, what do you do with this name at this point? And I don't have a position in it right now. I think I had actually tried. I always try to give as much information about what I did this week or what worked and what didn't work. I had tried a flyer this week on Micron. I think it was the first day of the big move down. I spent, I think, 37 cents for some weekly calls. On Thursday, I was able to hit a target at 60 cents, and then that's it. The rest actually expired worthless. So, that's what you have to be okay with that whenever you take a weekly trade or something really short term. That's how it works with those types of options. If they happen to go in your direction, it could be a huge winner. If it doesn't, it could be you're going to lose all the premium and it's going to expire worthless, or you're not going to be able to really get much back. So that's how you kind of have to think about that type of trade. But so what do you do now? This is a name that's gone from $49, got really overbought, and is now all the way down. What about almost $10? Not $10, maybe about $9, right from the high. So what do you do at this point? Do you go in and buy it? Do you? And there's a bunch of other names that we could talk about. We could talk about Nvidia. We could talk about Square, which they've gone crazy with buying calls, and then all of a sudden things got this is what happens sometimes when things get way too overbought and way ahead of themselves. So what do you do at this point? What I would do, or what I'm looking to do, is possibly go into Micron, but I would want to wait until somebody else does it first. Wait until the institutional money, wait until the big aggressive money starts buying the dip. We really didn't see that this week. We saw a couple small orders. What compelled me to take that weekly trade earlier in the week was somebody bought weeklies. So I followed somebody who traded weeklies, and I don't think they did very well, along with the trade that I did. But what you want to see is a little bit further out, and we really didn't see that. So just be patient. You could also set alerts. We've got a new December value area. We're just in the month of December now. 42.53, I would say, is your bogey. It did put in a nice hammer bar, so that's a good sign. But if it gets back and if it opens up higher, you're going to be back in a value. You're going to be back above the 50-day moving average. This is a sell signal, by the way, right? When you see the moving averages cross over one another. Now, they can reverse and they can go higher, but we don't know that that's going to happen yet. So these names, they don't go back up by themselves. Buyers have to come back into them. So you're going to see that, and we're going to see that, obviously in the trading room, and when we read the tape all day long, we're going to see that. So I think a mistake that some traders make is they see a dip and they want to go in and they want to buy it right away. Now, sometimes it takes a while. I mean, we could go back and we could look at situations where it didn't work itself out that quickly. All you have to do is you could look back to the Qs, and you could look back to where we had this big red candle back in June, and we had a little bit of a bounce here, and then it got kind of squashed, right? So here's an example of, now, granted, we ended up going higher, but if you're in the short dated stuff, you're going to get burned if this happens, right? So going back to Micron, you could do a couple different things. You could A, wait for the call activity. B, you could wait until it gets to a level that you like. C, you could start a position and start a position out. Don't do January options, don't do February options, but maybe you go out for a 6 month trade, because if it happens to do, and again, it just looks more visually a good example of going back to what happened back here in the Qs. Sometimes it takes, by the time the Qs retook this value, and again, we marched much higher, but this was in June, and I don't think we really got to a safer place until about a month and a half later, and then obviously we chopped around for a little while. So it takes some time. So sometimes I mentioned this at the end of the day. Sometimes all we see is we see the June call buy, or excuse me, we see like the next month call buying. So right now we've just gotten to December. So sometimes all we see is January call buying, and everybody wants to jump into January. Now that could work, and I'm not saying that that's not going to work, but I think there's just a higher probability of Micron and some of the other tech names recovering and going up. It could take a little bit longer than that. You're giving yourself a higher probability of the trade working if you go out a little bit further. That's my take anyway. I can't give advice or recommendations or anything like that, but that's the approach that I would take, because you just don't know how long this lull is going to be. And I do think it ends up higher. I think all that paper that's been in here all the way up, I think at some point they will return and buy the dip, but I don't know that for 100%, 100% sure. And the other thing to think about too is, let's say that the stock does go up and you purchase, let's say, June options or even January options. Those options are going to go up too. It's not like those options don't go up. So, yeah, they're going to cost a little bit more money. That's the difference in the risk to return. But you're giving yourself time for the stock to kind of do its thing. And keep in mind, it has lost the upside momentum, right? Everything is great when the stock has momentum. Once it loses momentum, it usually takes a little time to gather that momentum back up. So that's what I've learned, and I wanted to share that with you. The other thing, just overall with this kind of whippy price action and very headline driven, it is what it is with these Trump headlines. It's probably not going to go away right away. It's probably going to be a bumpy ride for a little while. So you have to think about that in your portfolio. Again, I trade cash positions, and I have a cash portfolio, a stock portfolio, and I have an option portfolio. So what worries me the most is positions that will be whipsawed in that type of a move. I think we saw that today. My P&L, I'm happy to share that with you. At one point, I was having a great day today. I was up over $2,000. And on the worst of it today, down $4,000. Is what I was down. And then basically, I finished flat on the day. I had a great week. This week and November was a great month for me. But for the day, I got out flat. I had a lot of good looking trades in the morning, but I wasn't expecting that headline, and caught a little bit off guard by that. So the further that you could go out with your positions, the more that you can adjust. And also, the other thing to kind of think about going forward is have that cash available to you, right? So when you get a dip like this, we go back to the crazy candle problem for IWM, which only finished down, I think, about 40 basis points, right? You need the cash available to kind of come in here and decide to do this. What did I do on the dip today? I bought a little bit of Qs. I didn't really want to go into small caps. I thought the Qs really have nothing to do with if Trump gets into trouble or not. Those companies really, they don't need Trump to be president for technology companies to go up, in my opinion. So I bought the Qs pretty close to the lows of the day. was not a huge winner for me, but I did make a little bit of money on it. I also added to a couple other trades on the dip, but I certainly did not go in and with two hands and buy the dip today. But you just kind of have to think about that, and you get these reminders, and I think today, with my P&L coming back to flat, there's no harm, no foul. But you want to be just aware of how quickly, if we do get a sell-off, what could happen to your overall portfolio? It's a little bit scary, right? And the more shorter dated positions that you have in your portfolio in options, and if you get a little bit of volatility, it's going to be harder for you to get that money back. It just is. It just works that way with the shorter dated positions. So go over this weekend. Good opportunity to go through your portfolio and decide. Like for instance, for me, I have no December positions on. I do have some January positions on, which makes me feel uneasy. I feel like I need to manage those positions and bring them out a little bit further because I don't want that high sensitivity in case we do get more volatility. If you have a great feeling and you think we're going to go straight up, higher, then maybe January positions are good for you. But they're going to be hard to weather cloudy skies or storms, right? So that's today's video. Today's video really not about option activity, but the first couple hours were fast and furious, like they've been all day, every day this week in terms of option activity. I would say, again, I'm not going to go into detail about today's every order that hit the tape today, and which I think is a good thing. I think looking at too many positions gets yourself into trouble too. It's just with having a lot of names that you're managing, it kind of gets you into trouble when there's a little bit of volatility too. I would say the major theme that we saw today was energy buying. OIH, which is the oil service, there's three ETFs that I look at in the energy space: XOP, oil and gas. I look at XLE, which is the biggest oil, which is like your big energy companies, Chevron and Exxon, and OIH. So OIH is oil services, much different than the other two. There's a nice 10,000. There's a nice block of 10,000 January 26 calls that were purchased for 33 cents. We made some nice money on that in the trading room today. Kind of a little bit of a day trade for me. But what we also saw is when you look at OIH, what the biggest holdings is, and this is kind of where my expertise kind of comes into play here a little bit. But you look at what this ETF is, and Schlumberger and Halliburton are big weights in this, right? That's about 31% of the ETF. What have we been seeing in Schlumberger? Just nonstop call buying, SLB, over the last week. You could look at what we've seen, just a lot of calls, a lot of December calls, a lot of January calls, some February calls in there. So that's the biggest weight in the ETF. Then also Halliburton, look at what traded today in Halliburton. If not Thinkorswim, if Trade Alert will work, a really nice chunky size trade. Look, they bought calls, 45 calls, and they sold 37 puts, 10,000 times. And where's Halliburton in the OIH? It's the second biggest weight in the ETF. So when they come in and they buy OIH, it kind of clicks for you that, hey, there's already been a big call buyer throughout the week in Schlumberger and Halliburton. Clearly, there's a pretty good chance that this group is going to go higher, considering all that money and all that paper that's in these names. So that's the kind of puzzle that I try to put together, and I think I do that probably better than most, if not all, regarding putting those puzzles together and making those into profitable trades. So that is just one example of what we saw today. And thank you for watching today's video, and have a great night. We'll catch you back on Monday. Thanks very much.